Good morning, Wake Forest family. So, the book of Ecclesiastes, the most familiar line in it said, "There's a time and there's a season for everything." It says there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, there's a time to mourn and a time to dance. And then, that brings to mind a line that a friend of mine, Barry Howard, wrote that, continually speaks to me. He wrote these words. He said, "Somewhere near the intersection of grief and gratitude, there is a scenic overlook that enables me to look at the past with greater appreciation and then look to the future with renewed courage." Grief, gratitude. Don't usually think of those in the same sentence. That's taken on a special meaning for me this past week. Some of you are very aware of my grief. We moved our younger daughter to an island off of St. Augustine, Florida. You've never had a spiritual experience until you've driven a 26-foot U-Haul truck 8 hours on an interstate. Not a good experience, but certainly one where I was trusting God about every single mile. But more seriously, to say goodbye to my daughter and the way it felt, it's a new experience for me. She's a long ways, 8 hours from home, and I still have grief about it. As you can tell, I still have a hard time talking about it. I know a lot of you go through the same experience and do well with it, and I expect to do well with it. And everything about what she's doing is so good. It's such a good chapter in her life. But it's a long ways from home. It's my baby girl, and I miss her. And there is a real grief about that. Also, this past week, there's been some real gratitude. On Tuesday, just yesterday, I celebrated 36 years of being married to the best person in the whole world. A reminder every year of, as I think of the times that we talked about through the years, of how incredibly perfect Kathy has been for me. From day one, she has always said, "I'm not a preacher's wife, I'm Bill's wife." And that's the best thing I ever hear from her. And that's always been the gift that she's given to me. So this week has been grief and there's been gratitude. And I'm sure that for some of you, one of those is dominating maybe more than the other. But can you bring in both aspects of it, the grief and the gratitude? And all this I've been talking about is family. And I want to say very honestly, there's some real grief and gratitude about my church family right now that is so dear to me, every one of you. There is grief. The pandemic has done its work. We're not seeing nearly the number of people presently in worship that we used to see. And I miss you. And I know that the reality is some of you getting out of the habit. I may not see you again, and that just breaks my heart to see some of you that are dealing with your own issues because of the pandemic. Brings grief to me because I know how hard it is. It has been for you, and I listen to you as your pastor. And I grieve that as being a part of a reentry team, that no matter what we decide, there's no perfect solution, and there's going to be some who disagree. And that's just part of the reality of the times that we're in. But that grieves me because, like everybody, I want it to be good for everybody. I want us to ever all come together. And I realize that's probably something that just is a false hope. But I also have incredible gratitude. Our church is just continuing to be a witness in so many ways. Yesterday afternoon, the Interfaith Food Shuttle, I can look out my window right now and see people working in the community garden on this Wednesday morning. Worship is strong, and we have so much to be thankful for. You all have continually reminded me of the goodness of God. And so that same chapter in Ecclesiastes, you go a little further and it says, "I know that everything that God does will endure forever." So this is a time for me to be still and be reminded of the goodness of God. And when grief comes, how more important than ever it is that I not lose sight that there may be a time to mourn, and I need to be faithful to that. But there's also a time to dance, and I need to be faithful to that as well. And so the intersection of grief and gratitude, to look forward to it, as he says, with renewed courage. Courage is what it's about sometimes, and that's another word for faith some days for each of us. So I want to close with a prayer that I have often shared with people when they are especially dealing with their own grief or struggling to find gratitude. It's a prayer I have prayed about my daughter Paige. It's a prayer that I've prayed over many, many things in my life. And here's the prayer. God, I pray that 5 years from now, I'll be able to see that what is going on right now is a gift that you wanted me to know. I say that prayer with a sense of trust that what I can't understand or don't even like right now is something that I can one day see how God's hand was on it. But also saying that it's not something I would have chosen, but it's not something that I'm choosing to trust God with. And so this morning, the grief is real and I own it. The gratitude for you as my church family, and gratitude for a wife who is my constant rock, could not be more profound. And so thanks be to God. For everything there is a season, and every season there is God. Hope you have a good day today.